Hello and welcome to this 15-minute forum, the title of which is How and Why You Should Flip Your Classroom. My name is Daniel Guiney, a teacher at Nordanglia International School, Pudong, Shanghai, here in China. And I'm going to try and keep this to less than 15 minutes if possible. Thank you very much for coming. This has been filmed on Screencast-O-Matic, which is a free piece of software, which is well worth trying for feedback for essays and things. But today I'm talking to you about flipped classrooms. On the screen here you can see a very quick definition from the University of Queensland. I'm just going to read it to you. It says, the term flipped classroom was popularised by teachers Aaron Sams and John Bergman from a school in Colorado in 2007 in response to a realisation that class time would be best spent guiding knowledge and providing feedback rather than delivering direct instruction. In other words, we give the students the work before they come to class and then we simply channel them within a lesson rather than actually just giving them a knowledge vomit. If I scroll down this page a little bit, you'll see it discusses the role of technology, and that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today, really, which is to capture content, to curate it, present learning materials in a variety of formats, and importantly, to capture data about students so we know if they're able to keep up the work or not. So really, the flipped classroom for me is a way of enabling students to learn at their own pace, and that's especially important for the type of students that I teach, who are often high-flying, able students, but also for those who maybe need to step back a little bit in their learning and consolidate. So setting up your own website is one way you can do this. There are lots of other ways like blended learning and some good stuff on the test websites, but I'm going to talk to you about one way, which is weebly.com, and how you can incorporate things like YouTube and Socrative and other stuff into it. So without further ado, here is my website. I've been teaching for a long time now, but this is an approach that's worked really well for me in the last couple of years. And you can see on the front I've got one of my IB students, and this is what he has to say in a much more dramatic fashion than me about the use of flipped learning in his classroom.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. I was just too busy looking at my strange addiction, which was provided to me by Daniel Guiney, flippinghistory.net. Ever since I've been provided with history, flippinghistory.net, my history grades are able to go up, and now every time I'm sick, I'm able to go back and look at the classes I've been missed. Everyone out there, I suggest you to look at Flipping History.
Okay, so it is an opportunity then for students to catch up on work, to jump ahead at their own pace and to go backwards. Very briefly, the main reason I put it on here is for students. So if I were to go, for example, on my toolbar to Edexcel IGCSE, you can see if you were an IGCSE historian, all of the topics are there. They all have a copy of the syllabus, and every single lesson is there to be downloaded. So for example, if I were to pick on, let's say, Russia, how did Stalin come to power? Okay, every lesson is the same. It has a key question, learning objectives, which is broken up into all, most, and some, a quick starter activity, the activation phase, which is the detailed notes, the consolidation phase, where they actually do something with that information, and the plenary to check how much they've learned in the lesson. I also, if you click these links here, put on a short extension article for those who want to do a bit of extra reading, which promotes higher order thinking in history. And it's the same like that for IB, for Key Stage 3, for IGCSE, so students know they can always jump ahead if they want to get ahead over the summer, for example, or go backwards. Likewise, I put some revision tools on, so there are revision menus, end-of-topic knowledge tests. I like to use Socrative. I know a lot of people like Kahoots, but I quite like the fact that Socrative isn't quite such a race. And I also like to use ProProf. So for every IG and IB topic, students can get their phones out or even on their TVs these days and have a go at a little pop quiz on the bus or wherever they happen to be. Also, here we go. If students want to revise, they can find copies of all their exam assessments, exemplar responses, glossaries of keywords, links to videos on YouTube, and one of my favourite things that we did last year were history revision workshops. So for students who couldn't attend, and also for those who could, we just filmed briefly the key parts of the revision workshops and put them online, unlisted, so that only students who are in this place can find them. Here's a quick example of one.
They created the Model T, which was a car, all of them look the same and were the same color to make it cheaper and more affordable for everyone else.
So that's what you can do if you're a student. Also, though, it's quite handy for me as a teacher and a reflective practitioner at times, I hope. I can ask my students to fill in a quick questionnaire, and I can get data from that that helps inform my practice in future. So that's another good reason to have a Weebly site. Additional challenges are always there if there are students who want to jump ahead. One of them, for example, is the History CCA that we do. We have a little league table on there where students quite like just to see who's moving up the rankings each week as they do a little History Weekly quiz. So there's lots of stuff on there for students, but also for teachers. It's quite helpful for me. The picture's a bit old now, but I put my timetable on there, a few articles that I've put together in the past, and also just a quick online CV, which is a useful tool to help you reflect on your practice and just make a log of things that you do. But also, if you're looking for future employment, it's quite a nice way to keep ahead of the game. As well as that, though, it's also useful for teachers to just make a note of what you're doing, really. So I put tech slams together, classroom displays, teaching and learning strategies, examples of how we use assessment for learning in the classroom, and a few other things besides. So if I were to click on, for example, the AFL section, you can see that within my department, there's always ideas of things that we could be doing, or ways that we can improve upon our practice in each of those key areas. So we like to keep that up to speed as well. So it's useful for my classroom, but also for me as a practitioner. I like to share it on social media. So I have a Facebook page called flippinghistory.net, and you can see here recent lesson about JFK, the role of women in Britain in the 20th century, the suffragettes, a couple of little videos and so on and so forth. So if you're a student who was allowed access to those pages, you could just click on this lesson, for example, and it would take you straight to that particular lesson. Okay, again, objectives, key question, 4-part lesson, and so on and so forth. And I also like to share stuff on Twitter. Again, the benefit of sharing things on Twitter, see a few more lessons here, pop quizzes and so on, is that you often get other people use your resources, and that's always quite nice. And sometimes they help you reflect better, and they use it in different ways and feed back to you, and that's really useful. So again, on my site, last thing I'll mention to you really is that I like to keep little testimonials of what other teachers have said about me, and it's just quite uplifting really, but it's also nice to know you're helping the profession out more widely. Within the site itself, I try and embed as much YouTube material as I can, and I find that it's really useful to create your own material as well as using other good stuff that's already on there. So for example, if I were to go to students and revision, amongst other things, you can find things like IGCSE audio guides, and on there there'll be little videos I've put together on YouTube about most of the key questions, some exam masterclasses for the various papers and skills required, all with the same corny music. If I can just press play on one at random, let's say that one, but which give detailed information to students when they're preparing for their examinations.
Hello and welcome. This audio recording is designed for students sitting the CIE IGC.
Okay, I'll pause there. You get the idea, I hope. And also, when you're using YouTube, I know some of you will know this already, but there's a really good analytics page. So you can see here, these are my analytics on YouTube, and you can see at the moment, not many people are visiting the page, about 40 people a day. But when I use it in lessons, it does tend to peak, and it's just a nice way of making sure you know who's using your material and where it's coming from. And also, you can feedback on comments. So again, you can see here just a few of my recent comments. Someone's asking me about how to use value in a piece of source analysis, how to cross-reference, and so on. So it's just another opportunity to enable students to to get ahead. Obviously, the stuff that I put on, I make public, but I do also have private channels on there. You can keep it so that it's useful for you. So, for example, my teaching and learning channel, only I can see. But again, if I want to model examples to students, I put lots of examples of student work on there, which I can then refer back to when I'm doing the same lesson in the future. So, for example, we have a student here explaining Hitler's rise to power through a hexagonal card sort. I can just play this at the start of the lesson. It works wonders in terms of helping model, scaffold, and explain.
Okay, so here are the reasons why Hitler came to power. So the most important one for me is propaganda, because it encompasses...
Okay, so in terms of where you go from here and how you get started, this is my Weebly site. Again, you can see lots of analytics, lots of ways that I can measure how many people are visiting the site. So 100 plus visitors this week and 800 views. It's a lot more than I could get in my classes. All I do is I go to Weebly.com, set up a free site. You pay if you want a name, but if you just want a name with Weebly in it, it's absolutely free. And if I click Edit Site, okay, it will ask me to log in, which I will do. And I can connect through my Facebook account, so I don't need to remember my password, which I frequently forget. Okay, and it will take me to a dashboard. It's a WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get website, so there's no need for much coding or anything like that. And it will bring me to a really basic page like this. Okay, on the left I've got my toolbars, things that I want to drag in to build a page. You can see this is my home page. And if I want to put title, text, gallery, videos, etc. in, all I do is literally drag the piece of text across over here. I would drop it in there. Okay, and all I'd have to do if I click on it is type something like, whoops, a daisy. Oops, I'll put 2 in now. Okay, so all I would do, if I clicked on it, I'll type something like, whoops, spelling mistake. So Nord Anglia is the best. Okay, and if I wanted that online, all I do is simply press publish, and that would appear published on my website. So that's all there is to it, really. And you can play around, you can do it however you wish to. But I find it's a really useful way to help students, like I say, go back in their learning, jump ahead in their learning. If I have a new student join me like I did this year in IB, I can just give her the link and she can follow all the notes and catch up on all the lessons in her own time. If a student's absent, it's quite easy for me to email ahead of year and just say, hey, here's the lesson that they would have done. So it's actually a really time-saving device as well, but one that I find works really well with students and that's measurably helped raise student attainment in my lessons. So that's 13.5 minutes of this 15-minute forum. I hope it's given you some food for thought, and if you've got any questions, as always, please feel free to ask me in the remaining 1 minute 19 seconds. Okay, over and out. Thank you very much.